if you had 5,000 square foot and you were utilizing 4,000, but the two rooms at the end of the hallway were just packed with boxes, you had intentions for them, but they never really panned out. And then you realize you're doing just fine with the rest of the space. Sublet them. It'll turn into a passive revenue income for you. You will actually be optimizing what you have, because whatever said and done, medical office space is a premium. It's expensive, whether it's your own or whether you're renting it out, leasing it. So we'll add some dollars to your revenue stream. You will be helping somebody out.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! Doctor! Doctor!
Doctor! Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, have you ever thought about starting your own practice? Does the idea of starting your own micro practice and making just as much, if not more money than what you currently make in your job sound exciting? If you're thinking yes, then this is the podcast episode for you. I'm your host of the Physicians and Properties Podcast, Dr. Alex Schloe, and today on the podcast, we have with us Dr. Mitra Sadhu. She is a nephrologist, a physician, of course, a mom, a change agent, and a vocal champion for lean practice. She's a nephrologist by training, and she's found her way into private practice on her own terms. We talk about her solo, lean, micro medical practice and what she's been able to build. It's absolutely incredible. She shares a ton of details about how she's able to practice medicine on her own terms in a small practice, which was originally just her, and now it's her and a virtual assistant, how they're able to provide better care, see patients when they want to, and now she works for approximately 2 to 3 days per week, full-time seeing patients 2 to 3 days per week. And she's able to make approximately the same amount of money as a full-time practicing nephrologist. It was an absolutely amazing podcast. We also talk about medical office space, and she's created an amazing platform called Link Medical Spaces. You can find that at linkmedicalspaces.com, which addresses the high cost of medical office space. It is an innovative online platform that connects healthcare professionals to available medical office spaces for you to lease or to sublet. Really cool episode, very unique. If you learned something from this episode, do me a favor and subscribe and share the podcast with someone who is going to learn something from it. That is how a podcast grows. And just give us 5-star rating as well. Thank you so much. Without any further ado, let's get started with today's podcast episode with Dr. Mitra Sadhu. Dr. Mitra Sadhu, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. So excited to have you on the podcast today. How are things in sunny Orlando, Florida?
Thank you so much for having me here, Dr. Schloe. It's warm and sunny in December.
Yeah, that's a great time to be in Orlando. It is cold and unfortunately not snowy in Colorado right now, but hopefully some snow soon. We were talking about skiing before we started the podcast and looking forward to getting up in the mountains some more here soon.
Yes, it's beautiful out there. We look forward to the change of scene, but we like it warm here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you get the best of both worlds. You get Orlando and you get the Colorado mountains when you come out here and go skiing. It's a win-win all around.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming on the podcast and staying up late. Do you mind telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Mitra Sadhu. I'm a nephrologist by training. I did my med school in India and then my residency and fellowship at the University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital, and stayed on in Florida. I run a solo lean nephrology practice and I work part-time and spend the rest of my time doing other things I love.
That is awesome. Well, a solo lean practice. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So what is a lean practice?
So I think it started kind of, serendipitously. I wasn't quite planning out of the gate to have a lean practice or anything. But when I first finished my training, I spent a little time at home with my babies when they were first born and very little. Then I started doing independent contracted gigs around town to give myself more flexibility. My husband is a busy subspecialist physician, so I'm the primary parent and I wanted to spend more time, be around for the kids really. A few years after doing that, wanted to do more and started interviewing around town and figured out that there are the two basic avenues or roads I could take. One was either to continue to work part-time, what they call quote unquote mommy hours, and not in a complimentary way. And that would mean that, there was no opportunity for growth and the take-home pay is unfortunately disproportionately low for the hours you spend. So that was one route. And the other was to work 100 hours a week and go down the partnership track and all the perks that come with that, including more 100-hour weeks. So somehow neither really sat right with me. So I thought a little more about it and realized that I would probably have to craft my own solution, which was going to mean that I was going to have my own practice. Now, how does one run a practice in this day and age, in these challenging times, and work part-time or have some semblance of work-life harmony? So that is how I decided when I did a back of the napkin business that I would have to keep my overheads really low, and then the math would probably work. And fortunately, it turned out I was right about that. So lean just means that I try to avoid waste as much as possible and make do with what I need for that period in the practice, for that time period, and grow as things are necessitated rather than for the sole purpose of doing something because that's the way it's done. And that is how I started.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's the way it's done is something that we hear way too often in medicine, for sure. Lean is a really cool method. Paul Akers, if folks haven't read, I believe it's called The Lean Principle, is a fantastic book all about lean, avoiding waste. Came out of manufacturing, actually, and they realized, hey, the margins are so thin with manufacturing. We have to figure out how we can make this as lean as possible. My buddy Hugh Carnahan was on the podcast a while ago, and that's essentially what he specializes in. Companies pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for him to be a consultant to come help them become a lean business. And he's made an incredible living doing that, changed a lot of companies. And it's simple things like, from a medicine perspective, it may be like just having 2 monitors instead of 1, or using an actual mouse and not the trackpad. And it's just all these little things that happen repeatedly throughout the day that take a lot of our time that maybe we don't even realize. And those little changes can make such a huge difference. And then, of course, as you mentioned, keeping it lean in terms of, hey, let's grow with the practice instead of like expanding just for the sake of expanding. So really, really cool.
I love.
How was that?
Sorry. No, I just wanted to say, I love that the origin story of lean. In fact, it comes from manufacturing, as you rightly pointed out. It came from Toyota. So Toyota in the second half of the last century, the leadership tried to figure out how to best implement practices that would keep the quality top notch and provide more value at a lower cost to customers. And then they came up with a bunch of principles and formalized into what I think they called it the TPS, Toyota Production System. And that manuscript actually went out of the company into other manufacturing at first, and then into all kinds of industries actually now. And in fact, medicine has been slow on the uptake of it, like medicine usually does. It's slow to change in general. But I think it is perfect for medicine because we are trying to meet a huge and burgeoning demand with ever shrinking resources. So minimizing waste and redundancy is so valuable, right? Because we are short on every resource you can imagine. Time, where everybody's burnt out, personnel are low, staffing is low, business costs are up, reimbursements are falling. So I think it makes perfect sense for medicine. And I just want to take a minute to point out also that lean is not synonymous with cost cutting, because that can be a slippery slope. The idea is to be laser focused on value and quality. And if I heard somebody else talking about their company, it was not medicine, but they basically said whenever in the beginning, now there are many millions in revenue and stuff, but he said in the beginning, every time I spent money, I tried to think, is this going to make the product better or the customer experience better? And that's what was his North Star, he said, in spending money. So I love to think of it that way, to be obsessed in a good way about value that we provide to our patients, and whatever is needed for that is a no-brainer, but everything else we can certainly cut down. And for a medical practice, for a private medical practice, or actually even a bigger setup, the 2 biggest expenses are office space and personnel or staff. So these are the big guns. If you can control cost and stay lean in these areas, the rest is really small potatoes.
Absolutely. That is such a great point, and love to hear the origin story with Toyota. That's right. I had forgotten about that. But really, really, really cool. Yeah. Hugh, basically, he always says, like, think about everything either as value added or no value added. And so we would like go through some exercises and he'd be talking about this, and you'd do something and be like, no value added, stop doing that, or value added, keep doing that. And so it's an interesting way to think about it. And you'll really start to notice, if you take on this kind of this mindset of thinking about your day, you'll realize, wow, there are so many different things that are not adding value, that are adding 30 seconds to each patient encounter, which maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, and ultimately throughout the day. And so you can really buy back your time by thinking through things from a lean perspective. So I love that. That's really cool. I wanted to ask you, Mitra, what was it like starting your own business, and what were some of the fears that you had around that with being a mom, being a physician, trying to figure out, hey, how can I blend the two together while also spend time with your babies?
Another good saying I heard in this regard that is relevant is the things that come easy to us, like medicine, it's not really easy. We just feel that it's easy because of the years and years of training we've had, that it has become such a highly honed craft for us. The things that are scary in general for physicians, they're not hard. They're just uncertain. There isn't an algorithm. There isn't a textbook per se. There isn't a written path, because everybody has to do it slightly differently based on what's right for them. So yes, the same fears came up for me. And in fact, I've generally been a very cautious kind of person. So finally, I was like, you know what, let's find out what failure feels like. Or like, if I fail, it's okay. It's still okay. I would not have probably done that a decade or two back. But so Google was a good friend. Everything is learnable, like Brian Tracy says. So just started one thing after another. Started with figuring out a name, making an LLC, getting a bank account, figuring out space. And and then you just go on, and one step leads to the next. And one fine day, open my doors.
That's great. Yeah, one step at a time, then you get to the mountaintop. I think, oftentimes physicians, I'll talk to them and they'll be mentioning like, hey, I want to cut back on my job, or I want to leave my job, or I want financial freedom. And they're really scared to take those next steps towards that, they're scared of failing, which of course we're all probably scared of failing, especially because failure for us as physicians can lead to patient harm, or, of course, the worst thing would be death. And so I think we are scared of failing. But I think the funny thing to think about in your shoes, or in folks who are in similar positions, is that worst comes to worst, you open up your practice and it completely fails, you just go back and get another job. Like, there is a huge need for nephrologists, there's a huge need for family medicine, there's a huge need for any physician. So your biggest fear is your present day reality. And so it's really interesting when you frame it that way and think about it that way. One other point you made, Mitra, I want to hit on. You said medicine's easy. I will say nephrology to me has never been easy. So thank you for doing what you do. But you're exactly right. It's, all the training and time that we get, it becomes a lot easier for sure. But
that's right. We forget in our quest for A pluses, right, for like decades on end, as far back as we can remember, that it's okay to do B minus work when it comes to entrepreneurship. Keep the medicine A plus for sure. But and that I think trips up a lot of us, because then we go into analysis paralysis and what would be great, which EMR and this and that, and like email service, this and that. And again, I heard one good way to put it is like when you look back at it, some of these tech solutions or other small things is almost like beating your head over, should I get a Toyota or a Nissan? Or, like they're similar class of vehicles, and it wouldn't make a huge difference either way. You would pay in the same ballpark figure, and each of them would take you from point A to point B. So the analysis paralysis does not help. You just take action. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, take action is probably the theme of this podcast. Everyone, that's their piece of advice. Like, just take action, just get started, just get over the analysis paralysis. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about the beginning of starting your practice. So you decided, hey, let's do this. I'm going to have a lean practice. I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to have a solo practice. What was that like? What were the next steps that you took once you realized, hey, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take action?
So there are a set of steps that are in the very beginning, which I mentioned, like starting up the LLC and stuff, because you need to credential with insurance companies. I'm a simple insurance-based practice. So that takes a chunk of time, 3 to 4 months at a minimum. And then there are things that you do closer to opening your doors, like figuring out the EMR and the messaging portal, et cetera, that kind of stuff. I started very lean with all of that. I had a Google Voice number and a Doximity fax number, because I was starting off without a patient panel. I did not, since I was doing locums, I did not have a professional footprint in town or a patient panel following me. So I had no idea whether the practice would take off and stuff. So I really started from 1 or 0. And I started as a micro practice. That means that I had nobody else helping with the practice, no employees, no independent contractors, no third parties, no billing company. So I was doing my own billing, of course, but also doing everything that it takes to run the practice, including picking up the phone, to rooming patients, to all of it. And I did that for a while until it started taking up my evenings and weekends. And then I was like, wait, this is not what I signed signed up for. I hired to buy back my time. And I did so not with a remotely located virtual assistant, not an in-office staff. And it's remarkable how much we can accomplish remotely. We can accomplish pretty much everything except the face-to-face interaction with the patient, which is the doctoring bit anyway. So you'd be surprised. Everything can be taken care of remotely. So currently I have an excellent virtual assistant. She takes so much off my plate that it's amazing. It's a huge help. And I still do my own billing. I still have, pretty much just her and no other parties, etc., involved in the practice. So that was a huge way, or is a huge way to stay lean, because staffing is, especially with increasing costs, is a big part of practice expense and overhead. And being able to keep that down it is really helpful.
Wow, that's amazing. I hadn't thought about using a virtual assistant. That's such a great way, like you said, to cut costs. What are some things that are tasks that your virtual assistant's able to accomplish for you? Because there's a good number of folks who listen to this who are interested in starting their own practice. We have a good bit of folks who are interested in direct primary care, and a virtual assistant may be a great first hire for them.
Yes, 100%. The DPC world is actually one of the foundational principles of DPC is lean, because they're trying to keep costs low and provide value that way. So yes, a virtual assistant is, it's great for any kind of practice, and you name it, and I think they can do it. So starting from scheduling and handling phone calls, to doing eligibility verifications, to doing all billing related tasks, to prepping notes, to sorting faxes, all of it really, right? And I think that encompasses, most of the broad aspects of tasks in a practice. So she takes care of all of that. The training did take a while, and that is something one must be prepared for. Again, every practice works slightly differently, and if you want things done the way you want to, and of course I was a micro practice, so I was used to doing things exactly the way I was doing them. So that it took me about 3 months to train her fully in all of these tasks, and I did one step at a time. And at the end of it, she was being made with all of this. It also helps that being open to a virtual assistant opens up the talent pool, because there are many really qualified people in other parts of the world, say nurses and pharmacists and stuff, whose own, meaning in their own healthcare system, the jobs either are not plentiful or do not pay very well. And so it's a win-win. They get a good job, they get to utilize what their expertise and grow, because it gives them so much experience, right? Doing so many different things. So I think it's great. Not to mention that because they're usually not treated as employees, but as independent contractors. So that saves you on, and if they are located overseas, then you're not dealing with many of the aspects of having an in-person employee for your practice.
Yeah, that's great. How did you find them, or any tips or advice for folks who are looking to find a virtual assistant that works in the medical space? Is there a good website or anything you recommend in that regard?
Sure. So there are a bunch of websites. These are agencies that will vet people for you. And that's what I went through, and would be my recommendation as well, because I do not quite know how to begin to vet somebody, especially for a medical practice, right? This is not social media. There's HIPAA rules and patient information. So I would certainly recommend going through an agency that will do the background screening and vet candidates for you. And you can tell them what exactly you're looking for. You're looking for somebody to man the phone. Are you looking for somebody who's a billing expert? And many a times they have people who have experience in certain areas from their prior jobs, and they can line you up with somebody who's appropriate. And there are a bunch of companies, that virtual assistant agencies now, who have talent from, say, Philippines or the Indian subcontinent or South America. So there are lots of options.
That's great. How often do you tag up with your VA or meet with your VA? Is that something you do before every shift, or what's that look like?
So almost every day, right? We try to do a mini huddle. There isn't that much to talk about every day, but yes, I try to check in and make sure. Also, we're constantly tagging each other on we use Spruce Health as a secure messaging platform, as well as that's where the faxes come in and phone calls come in. So if, say, a patient calls and has a clinical question, then she tags me with a task, and then I tag her back when I read that and say, yes, tell her this, or etc. So we're constantly tagging each other back and forth, and we'll pick up the phone and call each other if needed. So it really feels like she's in the next room.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's blowing my mind. I have a VA that helps out with the podcast and the real estate business and stuff. And the thought had not even crossed my mind how much of a benefit that would be in medical practice. Super cool. Thanks for sharing that. What does the practice look like, or what does kind of a typical week look like for you at this point now that the business is much more established?
So yeah, I started slow. Like I said, now it's kind of at capacity. I work 2, sometimes 3 days a week, and that's where I want to keep it. And those days are a full schedule because I want to get everybody in a timely fashion and everything. And so we are really on top of the calendar. As a deterrent, we have same day cancellation or no show fee. So that number is very low for us. Most people let us know ahead, hey, can't make it. And then we have a wait list going of both established and new patients, and we'll try to fill those slots with the waitlisted patients. So nobody really needs to wait very long to get in with me at all. So yes, 2 to 3 days a week. The rest of the time I am on top of messages and labs, which are important for me. Yeah. So between the VA and me, we return calls and everything pretty much right away. We are very easy to get a hold of. We encourage our patients to text or secure message us instead of calling. That saves time on both ends. I do cover myself on vacation. And again, that takes about 15-20 minutes of my time every morning. Say when I'm on vacation before the family's up, I'll just quickly look through, make sure there are no labs that need attention, tag the VA on tasks like sorting faxes, etc. And that's it. She does have access to me on vacation, but the need rarely arises.
That's amazing. What, if you don't mind sharing, kind of salary in this position? And you don't have to give specific numbers by any means, but where would you kind of say your salary is with your own solo lean practice compared to if you were to work part-time, locums, or 1099?
I love the question. So I make more than twice as much as I was making for the same amount of work while working as a locums. And in fact, I will say that I make pretty much a full-time salary with working part-time, just because, again, my overheads are super low. And not sharing profit with an employer.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, congratulations. That's incredible. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's ears just perked up for sure. That's listening to this.
We discount how much of a premium we are paying our employers for the simple tasks, the business aspect, that scary bit. If we can, as a group, get over that reluctance to handle the business aspect of medicine, we will all do so much better. Because I have a very rough calculation, and this is really, really very ballpark. But if you work 1 day a week throughout the year, 1 day a week, you will make roughly $100K a year for every 1 day of work. Can you imagine how much people work? Everybody pretty much full-time works 5 days a week. So that's like a ballpark $500K right there. And this is just with office visits. We're not talking fancy procedures and stuff. I'm very CKD heavy outpatient only. So it's really just office visits. So if you think of that, and then the median salary of a full-time physician, you can calculate right there the percentage of their take-home pay they're handing over to their employers because they don't want to deal with billing. They don't want to deal with hiring and firing and, credentialing and talking to insurances and handling denials. Are those things pesky? Sure. Are they a little scary to deal with in the beginning? Sure. But, the rewards, I think, are real. And I think the biggest reward is not the paycheck. It's probably the autonomy. And that's the talk of the town among all physician groups everywhere, right? The loss of autonomy, the devaluation. If that's bothering you, then, just take the step. It's not so bad.
Well, I'm sold. That's awesome. Yeah, super cool. Well, yeah, you get the autonomy back. You're the one making the decisions. You're the one that's scheduling patients. I mean, it's all your control, which is something that a lot of us have lost. A lot of us are looking for. So yeah, maybe this is a great way to do it. And I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine this probably leads to you being able to provide better care because you're less burnt out. You're seeing the number of patients you probably want to see when you want to see them. And you're probably providing better medical care than when you're working for a traditional employer. Is that right?
It's 100% true. So I, again, say that I am able to spend time with patients that is generally not considered feasible in a fee-for-service insurance-based model. And that's, simply because I do not have to fit empty patients in order to pay my bills. I can spend time with patients. Right.
That's great. Yeah. Wow. I love that. Well, let's talk a little bit about medical office space because that's something that you specialize in with linkmedicalspaces.com, and you're really working at connecting healthcare professionals to available medical office space. So if folks are listening to this and they're like, hey, this sounds like an amazing idea. I want to do it. You're the one that can certainly help link them up with that. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like and how you kind of combat the high cost of medical office space.
Sure thing. So when I first started, I was looking to sublet space from another practice practice in my area, in my neck of the woods, I just needed like one exam room, one day a week or something to start off with. And I had no place to turn to look for or to be connected. I'm sure there was somebody who had one room to spare, one day a week. But I, again, did not know where to find these people. I did cold call a few practices, very lukewarm response, did not know what I was looking for, and it did not pan out. So I ended up in a shared workspace location, and that's where I still am. And in fact, that is another big part of the equation of my lean machine, that my rent is really, really low. But but initially I really did want to sublet space from medical practice because it's more traditional. And that is when the seed for Link Medical Spaces was planted. I was like, it would be cool if we had some place where people who are looking for space can be connected with those who have space to spare. So it's a simple model. linkmedicalspaces.com is the only online platform of its kind specific for healthcare, where if you have some office space that you are not optimally utilizing, then you can, even if it's only part of your office, even if it's only one or two exam rooms, even if it's available only part of the time, that you can sublet it out on the platform for a small monthly, for a listing fee. And then anybody in your area who's looking for space can find it. So that is the premise. And on the other side, if you are looking to start a practice or maybe expand to another location, but don't know exactly how to pan out and want to keep things small, or want to work part-time, or want to keep things lean, any of those scenarios, want to start with a smaller overhead, then consider getting only as much as you need, instead of, again, I call it the medical version of keeping up with the Joneses, doing things just because you think that's how it should be. So consider subletting from another practice. From the practice owner side, it has so many benefits. First of all, it reduces waste. 15 years back, if you had 5,000 square foot and you were utilizing 4,000, but the two rooms at the end of the hallway were just packed with boxes, you had intentions for them, but they never really panned out. And then you realize you're doing just fine with the rest of the space. Sublet them. It'll turn into a passive revenue income for you. You will actually be optimizing what you have, because whatever said and done, medical office space is a premium. It's expensive, whether it's your own or whether you're renting it out, leasing it. So that it will add some dollars to your revenue stream. You will be helping somebody out, when they are starting out. And another really important thing is, maybe you can get in a medical professional who will add value to your patient. If you say family practice, maybe a dietitian, maybe a mental health professional. If you're a pediatric practice, maybe a speech and language person. So there are so many ways of thinking about it. For example, if you're a surgeon and you're in the OR 2 or 3 days a week, what's your office doing? Your staff is twiddling their thumbs. Your space is lying fallow. So, get somebody in maybe those 2 days of the week and utilize at least some of the space. And you can even staff share. There are right ways to do that as well. So many possibilities.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Like when you're saying that, it makes so much sense. And I think about all the waste. I mean, I'm military, and there's a lot of waste, to be frank. But I even think about like the exam rooms that we have that don't get used sometimes, at least for half the week or so. And that's probably the majority of medical practices across America have that availability. And I think as we see more and more direct primary care, and we see more and more folks who want to do these solo practices like you're doing, these micro practices, what a great opportunity to create a lean, mean, passive income machine in your clinic and be able to get that supplemental income as well. That is amazing. Have you... Oh, sorry,
no,
Mitra.
I just wanted to share that, I go around these practices, my colleagues and referral sources around town, and so many of them have these large waiting rooms that are lying empty because, they're doing a great job. They don't have 10 patients waiting in the exam room because they're getting patients in on time, but that space is lying empty. Then the restroom and the break room and all of these rooms, and even the smallest medical suites will often have 3 or 4 exam rooms. And the data says that the best utilization of exam rooms is 2 per physician per day, because if you and your are in perfect sync, you see a patient and she's rooming and he or she is rooming, and then you just tag team and exchange rooms, and that is like the best, most efficient way. So what are the other 2 exam rooms? They're just glorified waiting rooms, really. So there is so much redundancy if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly right. I know a few direct primary care providers, they have 2 rooms. One of the rooms is their exam room and their office. So they're keeping it as lean as possible. And then the other exam room is for rooming. And a few of them, it's just them. They started off like you in a micro practice, and like they're doing all the rooming. They just have 1 exam room because they're like, what's the point? This exam room can be in my office. This can be the exam room. We get it all done right here. So yeah, a lot of ways to think about it. But yeah, I was thinking about that when you said keeping up with the Joneses of like medical lifestyle creep, just like the lifestyle creep when you go from a resident to an attending and you think you have to have the big flashy office building and the waiting room and the break rooms, when really maybe you don't and can provide better care that way. So that is awesome. So linkmedicalspaces.com, when did you start that? How much growth have you seen? And what's some of the feedback you've gotten in regards to that?
So we launched it in April of this year. So it's been a little over 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And we have had some tremendous response. We have listings all the way from Florida to California, and all different kinds, big. We have a 7,000 square foot space in South Florida, and they're all the way to one exam room in an urgent care. So again, the spectrum, we're seeing all of it. We have a mobile clinic in LA that's listed if somebody wants to do home visits, etc. On the other side, we also have the demand side. So like if you are looking to start a practice and looking for space, you can create an account and put in a little bit about yourself and where you're looking. And we are hoping that as more and more people put in requests, we call that the space request, that it will motivate those who are sitting on space and not really thinking about doing much with it, can actually come out and connect with them so that, both sides of the equation are met.
That's great. What's next for you in your practice or in Link Medical Spaces? What's next for you? What are you looking forward to in 2025?
I am looking to keep growing the practice, not really for the sake of growing it. Like I said, I am happy where I am, but I have some small changes that I'm thinking of that might increase my efficiency some more. Let's see. The practice has pretty much grown more than 50% in year 1 to 2. And in the last year, we're probably about 40-45%. So it's getting capacity. And for Link, well, I'm just hoping to spread the word on it so that it reaches the people it needs to reach. Physicians are sometimes in silos, everybody's busy and in their own practices and personal lives and stuff. So I'm hoping that word reaches all the people it needs to reach so that it is able to impact those it's meant to serve. I also write about my journey with lean practice in my blog, Lean Private Practice Solutions, and have a Facebook group which is physician only, so we can share some of these challenges and learning experiences being small practices. And I hope to continue doing that and doing more with that. We'll see.
That's amazing. 2025 is going to be a great year for you. Mitra, if folks want to reach out to you, they want to know more. You mentioned the blog, leanprivatepracticesolutions.com. Is there anywhere else that would be great for folks to reach out to you?
I'm really easy to reach. So on Link, my email is hello@linkmedicalspaces.com. I'm all over Facebook. My full name is Sanghamitra Sadhu, and the Facebook group is the same as the blog, Lean Private Practice Solutions. So find me anywhere.
Awesome. And you're also in LinkedIn. That's how we connected as well. So really, so that's another great place to find you. So you're all over, easy to find, and folks should definitely reach out to you. I learned a ton from this podcast. My wheels are spinning, and really excited to hear and to learn about this, not only this lean practice model, but also the medical office solutions that you're offering. So this is just really, really cool. Dr. Mitra Sadhu, thank you so much for coming on the Physicians and Properties podcast tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great talking to you. Take care.
You as well. Thank you. Well, with that, it's been Dr. Mitra Sadhu and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.